didn't know there was a place called the writer's room. I thought you just work really hard and God will show me what to do. So that's what I felt like I've just always tried to do. I don't let myself be idle, because I knew if I stopped, the only other option would be sadness. And I just didn't want that. So I knew that God has a purpose for me. And I'm just going to keep doing and creating and listening and going where he says to go. And the way will be clear.
I can't wait for you to meet today's guest, Heidi-Marie Ferren. Just a very, very talented individual with so many gifts, and she's used those gifts in Hollywood and around the world with the role as Miss USO. Very accomplished writer, actor, and in her early childhood had a traumatic situation happen where she needed to be put into foster care for her own safety, and was eventually reunited with her sweet mom. And now, because of that time, that's really shaped her life and how she likes to give back and live a generous life. So I know you're going to enjoy hearing all about her use of her time, her talents, and her treasures, and how she blesses others with all that she's been entrusted with. So stay tuned for a great conversation. Welcome to the Generous Girl podcast. I am privileged today to have Heidi-Marie Ferren in the house as we discuss her life and her story and how she is an advocate. She's an advocate for many people, veterans, as well as children who've come out of the foster care system. Very talented individual, a writer, a producer, an actor, singer-songwriter, and her work celebrates resilience, faith, and the power of found family. So welcome, Heidi-Marie.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. It is a real treat to have you on the show. And I think it's special to spotlight someone with your story that was in the foster care system yourself, and yet now you've turned that around to help so many other people. You're also the longest reigning Miss USO, and all of the countries you've traveled for that role is quite incredible. And I just thought you'd be a perfect guest on this platform because I think you really epitomize living a generous life and using your talents to bless others and to really be an advocate for others. So I would love to just start for you to update the audience on kind of who you are and what you're busy with today and your many hats that you wear.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I love your show.
Oh, you're so kind.
I love that you give me not just uplifting and beautiful, wonderful interviews, but also tips and resources for life. I just feel like I always learn something new. So thank you very much for what you do.
You are very welcome. It's a real blessing to do the show.
Thank you. I'm blessed to be here. I guess what am I doing now? I just finished the first season on Memory of a Killer. It's a new show on Fox with Patrick Dempsey and Michael Imperioli and Gina Torres. And I love it so much. It's been so much fun getting to work on a story like that. It's about a hitman with early onset Alzheimer's. So we get to really be with him on his journey and kind of as he's losing his memory, maybe gaining a conscience and looking at the world differently. So there are, but a lot of suspense. My mother is always telling me, I'm on the edge of my seat. So that's been very gratifying. Incredible team on the show. And let's see, what else am I doing? I'm also executive producing a feature film with some friends of mine, which has been really great. We have another film that is the opening night film at the Real Abilities Festival, which is the largest film festival in the world for filmmakers with disabilities. And so excited about that. As we wait and see what the next season brings, I've been doing a new edit on my my book, so my memoirs, and working on writing more and engaging. I'm a CASA, as you said, so
Yes.
a court-appointed special advocate. So that is an incredible program that allows young people going through the foster care system to have an advocate, which is something that I didn't have.
Mm-hmm.
So that is very important to me, and also kind of recruiting more people to do it, because I think we always need more. It's a volunteer position. You are sworn in by a judge, but it's this incredible way to be a blessing to young people at their most vulnerable. Because I know that that's absolutely how I felt. I still remember the name of my social worker when I was
Wow.
going through. And if I ever find him, he gets the most enormous hug on planet Earth. His name's Raul. Raul, if you're out there. Yeah. So yeah, I think that, and taking care of my mom and trying to keep making the world better. We gotta love each other. So that's
So
what
the CASA role, how much time does that take? If someone's listening and they've heard of it before and they think, I have some margin to be able to do that. Tell us more about how that works. Like you said, it's volunteer position. How many hours a month or a week? What's your commitment level?
It really depends on the case. It's different, and there are people in the system that are, from many ages. I usually have been with young people as nonverbal, so toddlers, and that's a very different experience than some people, friends of mine, who have been working with people who are teenagers, and what happens after you, quote unquote, age out.
Right.
Right. So I think it does depend, but what's great about CASA is you have incredible training. It was, very thorough, and I was so grateful for it because I felt prepared. Even though I'm nervous, I felt prepared. And you have a supervisor who is working constantly to make sure, are you okay? And you are presented with a case before you accept. So is this something that you are able to do? And then that really, you're going to touch base with your young person at least once a month, but I try to touch it at least once a week, whether that's you're an educational advocate, a health advocate. So you're the person that's touching in with all of the pieces that affect that young person.
I see.
It's so easy for something to fall through the cracks. And unfortunately, things like healthcare have such a long, headway sometimes getting somebody the resource. Maybe they're approved for it, but then the journey to find the doctor, to find transportation to the doctor, all of those things, it's just easy for them to fall through the cracks. So a CASA gets to be a way to make sure that doesn't happen. And also, at the end of the day, you're the advocate for the young person. And in some cases, you'll get to see places where the parent also needs resources. So your priority is the young person, but also something that I think I'm getting off on a tangent, but,
it's good.
But in terms of time commitment, it isn't, it is manageable. There's definitely going to be times when you're juggling a bit because you have to be at court at exactly this time on exactly this day, but it's worth it. And I guess that the thing I was going to say is that reunification is always the goal.
Right.
And I don't think that's always been the case. It means, even to the extreme, that the idea being that a young person is better off with their family if it's safe.
Sure.
And that you can even, there's situations where maybe even an unhoused parent is unhoused. That doesn't mean they're not providing for their child. And what is it? Is it about getting resources so that the family can thrive? And just looking at ways to make a family thrive and a young person thrive within that family versus causing even more damage sometimes by severing a familial bond it can function, but it is just really hard. It's really, there's a lot of moving pieces,
Absolutely.
If you don't have a car, and you want to visit your child, and you got to take a bus both ways. So how can we as CASAs help that young person have the best maturing stage of life as possible, just so they feel loved, safe, and protected?
Well, I've always heard so many good things about the CASA program, and I know it's available in many cities, so not just out here on the West Coast. So anyone listening, if maybe you're now an empty nester, you've got a little more time, you love little ones, or you love teenagers, I would recommend look into it and see how you could get involved and do what Heidi-Marie is doing. From the investment side of things, in my role with Impact Foundation, where people can invest their money in their donor advised fund and then invest in for-profit opportunities, we just helped to close a big deal in Tennessee, in Knoxville. It's called Lumen Flats, and it's all designed for the foster children who have, exceeded age 18 and they're out of the system. But I'm seeing a lot more wonderful business people and opportunities where people are using their resources and their talents and providing, private solutions for this tremendous need that we have across the country. So it's neat to see everyone how, it takes a village for all of us to lean in. Time, talents, treasures, and it will probably never be solved, but we can certainly, make it better than it is today with everyone's help and resources. Okay, so you wear so many different hats. Let's jump into a couple of things came to mind when you were talking about all the different things that you're doing. Talk about how you initially became an actor in Hollywood and then also a writer, and how that kind of career path opened up for you.
Yes. Okay. Well, I was actually a child actor. So I started really young. My mother, so after I was out of foster care, I had a child therapist, Dr. Mark Heller. Shout out to Dr. Mark Heller. He was amazing. But they advocated for, having me be involved in more and more things. And there were these like Pee-wee beauty pageants. And while my mother likes to make me think I walked on the stage and I was a star, I definitely saw a video of me. I mean, I was little, and I'm walking out on the runway sobbing, just sobbing. And I said, Ma, I don't know. She's like, it's fine. It got better. But one of those pageants, an agent was in the audience and saw me. And so I started doing commercials and then Romper Room. There's like a kids show.
I remember that show where they would call out people's names, and you always felt like they really see me.
Oh, it was awesome. So I doing auditions and things like that. And, it's funny. I had and this is a shout out to my mom, she was such an advocate for me. So much so that I have memories of things that, like, my agent screaming and yelling at her that I'd put on too much weight, and I was 10.
Wow.
I was 10 years old. Yeah. But my mother never, she talked to me like I was an adult, not, because I'd come from so much trauma, I had to mature very early. But not, I don't mean it in that way. She treated me with respect,
dignity.
Yes. And so even when I was like, I just want to be a kid, I just want to break, I don't want to take, because I was in like singing lessons and dancing lessons, and I don't know, it makes me really emotional. I don't know how she did all she did. But she made my childhood beautiful, even though I know she probably, and I know she sacrificed a lot to make that happen. But so that's how I got started. And
yes.
And then I kept going. I was always in classes. She used to work in the office at the acting school so that I could have classes.
Take the classes.
And And so I did more film and TV, and then, but we also, after a lot of, even after foster care, the court system kept coming, and not the court system. There were times my biological father, there was risk that there would try
Not safe for you. Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't safe. So we moved, but I kept doing it. And my mother also was very supportive. I went to school. So I kept performing in film and TV, but also a lot of theater. But writing was always something that I had done and been encouraged to do. So even as a kid, I was writing plays. If there was an assignment where I could write a play, make a puppet, that's what I would be doing. I just loved stories. Story was
right.
everything to me. In fact, so part of when I was going through court, because I actually had to testify, part of how they were able to show that a 4-year-old can remember the things that happened to them was, and at the time they didn't have children's court really, like they stacked like 5 phone books on top of each other so I could see above the stand.
Wow.
But it was telling the story of Snow White on the witness stand that proved, oh, she can remember. But yeah, verbatim, the Disney Snow White. So fast forward then to going to a lot of school and performing, but then ultimately getting in the Disney writing fellowship was a big full circle moment for me. But yeah, so lots of school. I did undergraduate theater at SMU, which that's where I also started thinking, oh, maybe I can write too, because the English department had recruited me. I studied at Oxford, Gothic literature and Shakespeare, and then graduate school for more classical theater, and then did the next best. Completely, after you do classical theater, absolutely the next step is rhinestones and fishnets. I went to New York, and I auditioned for the USO, and I got a hard time from some of my classical acting peers that were like, "You're a serious actor." My family comes from a long line of service, and I also have a very dear friend I rode the school bus with, Lance Corporal Aaron P. Mencken. And he is the kind of person that just lights up every room. Like you just walk
and it's magnetic.
Yes, just your whole day is brighter. And he was wounded outside Fallujah and had 3rd-degree burns over 3/4 of his body. And I knew that if that were to happen to anyone in this world, this terrible thing, I knew that Aaron would take this and make the world a better place, that this would be the beginning of his story and not the end. And that's exactly who he is and what has happened. And when I auditioned for the USO, I thought of him, and I wanted to be that kind of person for people like him. And so that's why I said yes to performing for them, with them. And then I was able to run for Miss USO the next year. And that's how I was reunited with Aaron. I was performing on the Intrepid, and he was there introducing Bill Clinton, because Arkansas, we're both from Arkansas. And it's the first time I'd gotten to see him in 2 years, because he spent 2 years recovering at Brooke Army Medical. And from there, it was actually blogging and getting to tell the story of other service members that had me start really plugging into this love of writing that I always have had. And so it was always kind of the two things beside each other.
Right.
And then when my mom, her illness and disability called me back home, I took it as an opportunity to just dive into my storytelling, and I got more involved with my community and taught writing workshops, became a CASA, and got involved with Brave Global, and really working to not let myself feel like I had left something behind in New York, but that I was still building something.
Right.
And that's when I started writing with this a Christian Entertainment Guild, and then I got to work with Jim Doherty developing new pilots. And I didn't know there was anything. I didn't know there was a place called the writer's room. I thought you just work really hard and God will show me what to do. So that's what I felt like I've just always tried to do. I don't let myself be idle, because I knew if I stopped, the only other option would be sadness. And I just didn't want that. So I knew that God has a purpose for me. And I'm just going to keep doing and creating and listening and going where he says to go. And the way will be clear.
I love that piece that you just said right before that about you kept building. And I think because God is the creator and we all have this creativity within us, and some people flourish with their creativity their whole lives. Others start out as that 4-year-old Snow White story, and the creativity, they're painting, they're doing ceramics, Play-Doh. There's no shame or judgment of, oh, that's not a good picture, that's not well done. Like, little kids just create. And then I think as we get older, depending on the situations we're in, do we have a gifted teacher that is encouraging for everybody with their different artistic talents or acting, then we can continue, or we can really be shut down. And I think when you're shut down, that lie that you believe your whole life can become, no, I'm not creative. I can't do this. I can't paint. I can't this. I can't that. And really, like, it's just so not true, because God is creative. He made us in his image. And like, my mom's a very gifted oil painter and a watercolor painter. As far as I know, I don't think I have that talent, but I have the interior design and colors and fabrics. And that's kind of my artistic side that I love to express. But I've also helped people build vision boards where, they take the foam core board and then they get the pictures to just kind of ask God, like, what do you have for me in this year? And what kind of, focus? Is there a Bible verse you want me to think of this year? Or is there a theme? And for me, for this year, it happens to be Isaiah 43. Like, don't you know, I'm doing something new. And just, that is the verse. I could tell you so many different things that have happened with that verse. And wow. I think no matter what age we are, having that mindset of we are still building. And sometimes in a season, you're not able to, quote, build with those talents. You're obviously a very gifted writer, and yet there are times where you needed to pay the bills and work for USO, and you couldn't write as much as, you might be able to now. And so we just need to keep going. And one time I had Kay Warren, Rick Warren's wife, on the podcast, and I know, I love her. And she talked about, Rick and all the things that were happening when Saddleback was growing so much. And I asked her, like, what did you do kind of when you were in that waiting room, when it wasn't really her season necessarily? I think her kids were younger. And I loved how she explained, she just did the next thing. She just kept herself growing, building, so that when God called her, she was ready. And that's, I think I really just hear that in your message. Like, you're not willing to, like, waste a hurt or waste an amazing thing that's happened in your life, but you want to use that, Lord, and that's a generous life. You're using what the things that have happened to you, the challenging things, the amazing things, and then you're using your power of story, whether it's through acting or the USO role or writing, and pulling people into that story. And then I think that's helping them take the next step in their own story, which I just love how you explain that.
Thank you. Romans 8:28, all things work together for good for them that love the Lord and are called according to his purposes. I remember young hearing that and knowing that it's all things, not just the good.
Sure.
But all of those things work together for good. And I think that my mother actually shared, because I had said that she had never heard that verse that way before. So it meant even more to me that I could be a part of her journey and story as well. But I think that that's all the things, like it's the stuff we're doing to survive that's as important as those things we're doing when we're thriving.
When we're thriving. Mm-hmm.
And that the thriving doesn't happen without the other. You're
Right.
better than the thriving if you know what it took to get there. You know, I think that's really, really important. The running is as important as the winning or the
sure.
You know.
And the humility that comes along with that, the tenacity, then you wanting to encourage others to, keep taking the next step and not giving up. I wanted to ask you, tell us a little bit more about what you said about the writer's room and the Christian Entertainment Guild.
Yeah. So I was doing Groundlings, which is like an improvisation and sketch comedy, one of the kind of stops on the way to SNL. So there's Groundlings, there's Upright Citizens Brigade, there's these great places to go to, and had a community built there. And then I saw this thing for the Christian Entertainment Guild that was just starting, and they were doing lots of things. They had their own talk show, they were doing their own sketch comedy. And so I got involved with them. Susie Sachs, it was awesome. And then I was able to bring in dear friends of mine, because everything's better when you're doing it with friends.
With your friends, for sure.
Yes. And so we all kept creating together, and they started creating programs because they wanted to make television programming. They all had, everyone was in the entertainment industry, but now taking time and talents and putting them together to try to see what we could make and really do. And so Jim O'Doherty came as part of that. And we had a writer's room. So I got to be a showrunner's assistant under him and experience that. And then also be at a table while we were developing. We had 2 different pilots. And that was the first place that I really was like, oh, wow, this is a delightful place where you sit in a circle and you have ideas all day. And it's so much work. And it's, I have been incredibly fortunate to be in writers' rooms that have been extremely supportive and loving. And the first show I staffed on was Station 19. It's Shonda Rhimes' show. It's a spinoff of Grey's Anatomy. And that writer's room, let me tell you, they were just full of love and support and incredible talent. I learned so much from every single person in that room, and deeply committed to having story impact the world for the better, to make the world a better place through story. Because if we, I did not always see stories that reflected my experience or who I was when I was a young person. And to have a programming on air now where the people behind getting those stories on the air are committed to having that not be the case for as having to feel seen. And television is the one place that gets almost everywhere. I mean, especially
absolutely
here.
Around the world.
Yes, everywhere. Yeah. And it Mr. Rogers partially raised me. So
is it true? Someone was telling me that, and they produce a lot of films, but they were saying that right now, if you pitch these more wholesome, positive Christian values type of ideas to the big networks, that they're actually very open to producing this type of content. So you're finding that as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's all about the story, right? I mean, I know there's the business side of it and trying to make sure that it will turn a profit and sell and get people to watch it. And if it's what people want to watch, they want people to watch it, right? So, and I think there's more and more call for that. I mean, you look at shows like Sweet Magnolias on Netflix, which is, I think is a great example of what you're saying. And it is literally the world that gosh, anybody wants to live in. I want to live in Serenity. What a beautiful and amazing place. And I think seeing a place like Serenity on television tells us that we can make our own Serenity. We can be this for each other. We can create places like this. And I think it's harder to think that when you can't see it. And that's something that television gives us. It gives us the ability to see the worst of the worst and avoid it, and the ability to see the best of the best and emulate it.
No, it's encouraging. I mean, even the film recently, I Can Only Imagine too. I don't think that movie would have come out 15 years ago, 10 years ago. And seems like it did really well in the box office, which is wonderful.
On the scale that it did. It's a major motion. Sure. And I think that's a testament to the filmmakers as well.
Absolutely.
Like, we want to see more stories like this. Let's put the budget behind it. Let's make this a major motion picture,
right.
And I think that's also our community saying, we want these stories. We're going to show up for these stories.
That's right. We'll pay for the tickets. We'll refer to our friends. Yes. Totally.
Yeah. And I don't think they knew there was a market until they were shown. There's a market. And yeah, I think that there's a kind of reawakening coming. I'm so excited about Angels. Like, these are all places.
And the level of excellence too, right? Like, these films are on par with an excellent film that wouldn't have the Christian values. And that's so important too.
Yeah. Yeah. And that you can have, I think too, maybe there's this idea that if it's a Christian film, it's going to be preachy. It's going to,
limit the audience or
make the audience feel left out in a way. Like, if somebody goes to see it and they're not a believer, like, can I even enjoy this film? And I think that there's so many stories where people are included. And I think that if you're if you're part of the conversation, God can get in. God can come through the door if you're letting it be cracked a little bit. It's not, it should be opening and not limiting. And I think so many stories are doing that now, where like you said, Christian values, like these values being put in, that these are story points. Jesus taught in parables. They're stories. We have the need for story built in us. So it only tracks that we would be wanting to, tell those stories and be a part of how that light gets out into the world. That's what Angel Studios, that their motto is amplifying light, stories that amplify light in the world. And I think there's such incredible content on there. And Kingdom Story,
totally.
Yes. Yeah. Cabrini, if you haven't seen Cabrini, what a beautiful film.
And they were behind I Can Only Imagine.
Yeah. And Jesus Revolution, just so many awesome stories. And getting into television now too, there's a lot of television programming. And then I just heard that Seventh Heaven might be getting a reboot, which was a show that we always watched growing up and I loved. So Highway to Heaven hasn't come back yet, but I'm working on something like that in the back.
Exciting. Oh, well, it's so great having you on the show. I have gotten to know Karen Cavell with the Hollywood Prayer Network. And what a wonderful woman, called many years ago to pray for Hollywood and to pray for actors and the influence, that her ministries had. In fact, I was just in New York City last week, and the place where I was staying, I walked in the downstairs and there was a sign that said the Hollywood Prayer Network gathering that night. I know. And I thought, look at that influence. Here we are. I mean, Broadway stars in New York wanting prayer with the Hollywood Prayer Network from California. So it's really cool to see just each person taking the next step with what God has called them to do. And I just want to affirm you in using your many talents. I think many listeners hear your story and think, wow, she's a writer, she's a producer, she's an actor. Like, you are uber talented. And it's just beautiful to hear how you've used your gifts and your talents and continue to bless others. And, especially in your role as a CASA volunteer, and just sharing what what you've learned. So thank you so much. Thank you for sharing your story. And I just want to wrap up at this point asking you mentioned Romans 8:28. Is there any other Bible verse you'd like to share? Any book you're currently reading you'd recommend, or a bargain?
Yes. Okay. I would say Jeremiah 29:11, for I know the plans I have for you, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future. That was when I heard during COVID, when I felt really, I was taking the trash out and I just didn't know what to do. And that verse, God just gave me that verse, and it was just this wash of peace. And I think of it all the time, for I know the plans I have for you. And what was my book I am reading is Awe of God. And I started it for Bible study, and then we did a side, we started reading a different series for Lent, and I kept reading the book. I went ahead. It's fantastic. It talks about the restructuring the idea of the fear of God. What is the fear of God? But it's been wonderful, and I highly recommend
it. That sounds great. I think that is so key, that the fear of God, and how when we lose that, we just don't have things in the proper perspective. And when we put that as fear of the Lord, but knowing how much He loves us, it changes everything.
I totally agree. And I think too, that culturally so much, the word fear, people think of it as, we don't want people to be afraid. It's so much bigger than that. Right. And that's one of the things, a big part of why I think this book is so important. And then bargain. So Priceline is something I like to, usually you can still get good deals and looking at, you can't do it in the UK. So my tip is, don't look for a bargain on a hotel in the UK.
Okay. Make sure you're in the US.
Yes. You can or Scotland. You can do it in Scotland. I've got a 5-star. It was incredible. I had a view of fireworks, and this room was insane. So you can do it in Scotland.
Interesting.
And the US, but don't do it in the UK, because you won't win. You'll stay above a convenience store and on a bed of straw, which is great, but it's not only if you knew it was coming.
Right. Yes. Well, thank you, Heidi-Marie. Thanks for being here. God bless you and all of your endeavors. And I look forward to following your career and finding some of those shows that you've been in the past and current ones that you're in now. And it's been a real treat having you on the show.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. God bless you.
Absolutely. You too.
Thanks so much for joining us today on the Generous Girl podcast. We're so glad that you're here. And if you know of someone that you think needs to be a guest on this podcast, please reach out to us. New episodes are released every other week, and you can follow us on YouTube and on all platforms. Thanks for being here, and we'll see you next time.